I forgot that one of the things I love about the 92nd Street Y is that when you're on stage, they do the lights in such a way that you've just no idea if there's anyone there. So it's extremely relaxing.
I know, but now this person right here knows that I'm lying when I point at you and seem like I'm like, yay, friend, but I don't know who you are. I can't see. Hi.
Okay, Kelly, I think we should just get right to the most important thing. There's a dramatic revelation in this book that you did not eat cheese for 10 years. Kelly,
That's true.
Why did you do that?
You should have your own talk show. That's my first observation. So I got into this thing with my mom, and my mom was and is like a formidable opponent. And as mothers are for all of us, she was my first everything, you know, my first friend and my first foe. And we had a long, rich relationship of like nose-to-nose combat. And so at some point, my 10th birthday was upon us, and my friend Allison, who had way more money, had this awesome pool party, and her mom was really crafty, and she sewed she got white towels, and then she got this cute like Hawaiian print fabric, and she sewed it into like a little fish pocket so that when we left, like each one of us got this like amazing party gift. And I had been planning to have a pool party too, but it was going to be at my mom's bridge partner's pool because we don't have a pool. And then that started to feel kind of like shabby by comparison. And so then my mom said, you know, well, I'll tell you one thing we have. We have a pool table. Which I, like, to this day, I think is like total bullshit that I never got a pony, but my brothers got the pool table. And so she said, you know, maybe we could have a different kind of pool party. And so then, you know, she turned me. She got in there. She Jedi mind tricked me. And I started to fall for the idea. But what I really wanted to, like, sort of keep up with the Joneses was I wanted each kid to be able to order their own hoagie. In Philadelphia, we eat hoagies. And I believe they're called subs or something here. And so anyway, my mom just instantly, like without even looking up from her book, said, oh, Kelly, that's ridiculous. Those girls won't eat half a hoagie, and I don't want to deal with special orders. And we'll just get pizzas, and everybody will be fine. And then right then, I had this critical decision to make. Like, was I going to dig in on this thing, or was I going to let her roll me? And so I said, I don't eat pizza. And she said, what are you talking about? And I said, I don't eat cheese.
And this was before that was a thing. This was before every other
First of all, there's
person.
nothing about food that's a thing in Philly.
Okay.
Like, Philly doesn't have, like, food things.
Okay.
Philly eats anything. And so, yeah, I said, I don't eat cheese. And she said, oh, my God, that's ridiculous. You had a cheeseburger the other day. I saw you have nacho chips. And I said, nope, I don't eat cheese. I hate it. And she's, nobody hates cheese, Kelly. And I said, well, I do. And that was not enough. And so she got the pizza, and I just had potato chips on my paper plate. Thank you. And then, you know, I would take the cheese and, like, lift it off, you know, like it was like a nasty, hairy spider, you know, just like I couldn't even bear to touch it anymore because I was so not a cheese person. And then I would drop it in the trash and just fold the pizza bread and eat the, like, soggy tomato pizza bread.
And keep in mind that the measure of how impressive this is that she loves cheese.
Yeah, I do.
She loves it.
I eat it many times every day now.
So for 10 years, you stuck with it.
For 10 years. I had to prove to her. And then, and when you say that you don't eat cheese, like, people go bananas. Everybody will try to dissuade you from being a person who doesn't eat cheese. And everybody has their very special cheese, like the key to unlock your door a little bit. Like, they're like, wait a minute, what about cheesecake? You know, or whatever their thing is.
Yeah.
Brie? And so then finally I started saying that I was allergic to cheese, which is a big fat lie. And then this girl, Mary Kay Lombino from New York, was one of my roommates freshman year, and she had me over to dinner in Rye, New York, and her mom put out sliced tomatoes. We got some rye in the house. Sliced tomatoes, basil, and then what I thought was like poached chicken. And she had asked me early in the year if I was lactose intolerant. And my answer was, no, I'm Catholic. Because I had no idea what lactose was.
Right.
And so then she just watched me eat this boiled chicken, and I just loved it. I couldn't get enough of it.
Sure.
And I thought the olive oil was butter. I had no idea what olive oil was because
that's Philly.
That's Philly.
Yeah.
And that's Mary Corrigan. I didn't know where peas came from. I'm not even kidding you. I was at my friend's house, whose name is Muffy, who I think is here. Muffy, are you here? Yeah. So you can validate this. So one time I went over to Muffy's house, and they're real food people, and they eat proper stuff from a farmer's market. And your mom, Marge Prendergast, asked me to shell the peas. And I remember opening a pea pod for the first time and seeing the 3 little peas, and it took my breath away. I was like, that is so beautiful. And then Muffy's mom was like, Kelly, it's a pea. And I was like, not in my house. My house, you open the freezer and you cut open the bag and you pour them out.
But if my powers of interpretation are correct, the reason we learn about this in this book is this is an example of how Mary Corrigan, your mom, was not engaging in a popularity contest as a mother. She was doing her job, and she wasn't going to get hoagies, even if you said, I don't eat cheese, and even if you proceeded to not eat cheese for a decade.
That's right.
So now, would you say that not competing in a popularity contest as a mom is something that is easy or hard for you?
So I think it's nearly impossible. So the word, the book centers around these 12 sentences that I find really difficult to say that I think are really required for family life and for being an adult, for being a functional adult. And one of them is no. And my mother was the Rosa Parks of no. And then I tell this story, which is really one of the most shameful things I could tell you, is that I went to the mall one day with my daughters. Even just going to the mall is not something I sign up for that often because I'm dreadfully cheap. And Muffy can also attest to this. And whoever you are, you probably know that also, don't you? Totally. It's horrible. It's bad. It's really bad. To the point where my husband once said, I don't feel like I'm going to be able to have sex with you anymore if you keep wearing clothes from Costco. And I'm like, but they're Levi's. And he's like, they're not. They're not the same. I don't know what they are. I understand that that's what it says on the label, but those are not Levi's. So anyway, I took my girls to the mall because it was raining and they were bored, and already I was trying to win them over just by taking them to the mall and doing this thing I didn't want to do. And then we went up the escalator, and there was one of those, you know how these days they have those little things, they're islands in the mall?
Yeah.
Where they're pop-up stores, but they don't have doors, so you don't even know you're in it. It's like waking up kissing someone or something. You're just all of a sudden you're in this space, and you can smell the smells, and there's a little music, and over comes this Persian goddess woman in heels this high and a pencil skirt, and she's looking not at me but at Georgia, my now 16-year-old, whose hair was up in this crazy spiky bun, and Georgia has enough hair for 4 to 5 people. There's just mountains of hair. And she sits her down in this, white pleather and chrome stool thing, and she takes this wand out of a holster. They had them all there, and they slide it out of the thing. And she starts, pulling this ceramic hair straightener. And, I am telling you, that kid could have been, on the front page of Elle magazine. Her hair looks so fucking good. And I know she's going to want it.
Right.
And I know the lady is not going to tell me what the price is. There are no prices listed here. You got to call the manager. You got to ask for a special price for a very pretty lady. And, you got to get the argan oil, 'cause that really helps. So anyway, guess how much this thing cost, and guess who bought it? $200. And I bought it. That is so far from where I was raised. I've never spent $200 on a pair of shoes for myself.
Kelly, you're so innocent.
But I just wanted her to love me. I did. I wanted her to spin around.
Did it work? Did she love? How much love? How many hours of love?
Did I get for the 200?
Yes.
I want to say I got like 22 minutes. It wasn't good like U-tiles per dollar. Like
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. But another example you give in this book of someone saying no to something big that was hard to say was your husband saying no when you wanted to adopt a third kid after you had survived cancer and you had your strength back and you had a lot of strength because you actually made a spreadsheet, which is a good indication that someone is at full
capacity.
You made a spreadsheet with the reasons and how it would work.
And all the options.
And all the
like
options.
Like an egg donor or, and I had made some calls and I talked to some counselors. And I mean, I was a person who, like I had this motto, 4x40. So I just really wanted a big family. I really believe in it. I believe in hardship and I believe in, I believe in like having to fight for people's love and attention. And like, I just think all that's probably like generally good for a kid. Also, I know that I over-parent. So I thought if I had a few more, it would protect me from my own natural instincts. I know you're laughing, but like this is like completely real in my psychotic mind of how I worked out the calculus on why I should have 4 children.
That you could disperse.
Right. It'd be like, listen,
yeah.
if your tendency is to like get up in their dish too much,
yeah.
then just have some more because
right.
then you won't be able to.
Right.
You know?
No, I think it sounds smart.
Right. Thanks.
But
that's why we like each other.
Right, exactly.
Because I make sense to you.
Yes, absolutely. But unfortunately, for you, I wasn't your husband then.
No.
So it didn't matter that I think that's smart. And your husband
No.
said no. And tell us about why you think it's so important to be able to say no to the people we love.
Because I think that there's a real high chance for martyrdom, and I think martyrdom is really poisonous. I think like in small ways and large. Like I think it's really scary. Everybody knows somebody in their town who will always say yes. They can get them to do anything. Like we have this ridiculous tradition of this Scarecrow Contest in Piedmont where every classroom makes a scarecrow. And so it happens in 3rd grade. Like every single classroom takes it on and you have to make it. And then some of them are like amazing. They make them out of recycling or shreds of fabric that they got down at Dress Best for Less. And they all have a story behind them and everything. And there's always somebody who's going to sign up to do the Scarecrow, even though no one's going to help them. And I think it's really important to the extent it's possible to like do things out of love and enthusiasm and with joy, rather than to do it and with like kind of martyrdom in your heart. And I think that runs all the way through our biggest decisions. And I also really believe that in adult relationships, and I mean adult in a really specific way, which is like an immature, evolved relationship, if everybody takes care of themselves, things go so much better. But if I'm counting on you to make me happy, then that's like a really dangerous zone to be in. So I sort of think like the most evolved position to take is I'm going to take care of myself and you take care of yourself. And that way we can just enjoy each other. And we can take each other off each other's list of things to do. You know
and yes means yes.
And then that means that when somebody says yes, they really mean yes. And you know that. You know how good that feels to actually be able to trust somebody when they say yes, that they don't like secretly hate you for it. You know what I mean? Because people do. People who can't say no have a lot of bitterness like burning in their heart, I think.
Yeah. So are you better at saying no? As you
there's rings. So
on?
like I'm good at saying no I'm really good at saying no on email. And I'm unsubscribing and I'm doing other like acts of no that I would consider to be like sometimes I close my eyes on the subway. Like that's a way of saying no. Like that's a way of going inside and you're allowed to do that. And there's all these opportunities actually to have these like tiny acts of no. I'm not good at saying no to my children because of the fleeting nature of parenthood. Like because I know that they're leaving and they're both in high school now and I have this terrible, overwhelming sense that it's like getting pulled away from me, then I really am tempted to just say yes to everything and make it super fun. And also I work, which I used to be a photographer and I used to do like candids of people's kids. And I always laughed that the women who were at-home moms, like they'd say, Jimmy, Jenny, sit over there, look at her, smile. Don't say one word. And the kids would just go. And the moms who worked would say, Jimmy, smile. Jimmy, if you smile, Mommy will get you an Xbox. And I thought, at the time, I was more or less an at-home mom and who had this little side gig that I could run away and do it when nobody was looking. But now that I'm a real working mom who travels and stuff, I really understand the impulse to not make your limited time together contentious. Mm-hmm. And if that means giving them little presents for no good reason, by God, I'm giving them. But I thought when Edward said no to that, he said it in such a, when I laid out my plans for like, this is how we could grow our family. It was so final, the way he said it, and it was so kind. And it was just like, you don't make a man do that. Like, I'm not going to take, he said, I feel like I've finally stopped worrying. You were sick for 2 years, you were in treatment. And everybody's fine. And I just don't have it in me. I don't have another project in me, and I don't have that kind of vulnerability in me. And we know that this is not like a linear experience. This is a bumpy, hard road. And I just want to enjoy what I have. And it was like, and then I just started crying on the plane, and we just held hands, and I cried, and he was like, I don't know what to say, but the answer's still no. Which is, of course, the right thing for him to do.
Yeah. If he knows that's...
If you know, you
yeah,
know.
then you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And then you have to be able to suck it up when someone else is sad.
Yeah, and also, yes, which is really hard, right, to not waver. I mean, I was a person who, like, would break up with someone, and then I'd, like, hook up with them, like, 7 more times. You know, because I was like, I feel so sorry for him. He seems really sad. And also, it'll be, like, so delicious, because it'll be, like, reunion sex. Not that we were having sex, Mom. So, anyway, where was I?
I'll just take us to the next thing.
Okay, good.
How about that? Okay. It's a sad thing.
Okay.
Okay. And what leads me to it is what you were just saying about, you know, as a working mom, you know how fleeting things can be. And I think a lot of this book is about loss and the fleeting nature of enjoying people we love, right? This book is dedicated to your friend Liz, who died how long ago?
2 years.
2 years ago. And I could feel her presence, like, on every page. Even the pages where she wasn't. It just felt very much like a conversation with this person. And I wanted you, if you would, to tell us a little bit about her and about that friendship and what it meant to you.
So Liz Lotz, who's an East Coast girl, went to Syracuse, and then she went to Duke for a public policy school. God, you. Who are you? She was kind of studly. Like, she could surf and she could snowboard, and she did a triathlon during chemo. She was a person who read the paper every day, like the local paper. So she was one of the few people I knew who actually followed local politics before this moment when we're all being taught that, like, you have to follow the local as well as the national and the international. She was really private, and she was really humble. And all that was exacerbated in a way, which I say it in a negative sense because I was really dying to know her for a long time, by the fact that she has a really charismatic husband. So her husband, Andy Lotz, started this watch company called Nixon. Have you ever heard of Nixon watches? Yeah. And and it was a great success, and they were bought by Billabong and blah, blah, blah. So he always had a story to tell. He had just been to Switzerland at, like, the watch show, and you could just talk all night about that crazy thing. And so she got small. You know, she was just, like, over there in the frame, but very small in the frame. And the less she talked, the more I wanted to know her. And we traveled together a lot as families. We had spent every Thanksgiving together, and Andy and my husband are really best friends. And so I was just itching to know her. And, I mean, honest to God, like, I've talked to you in the 2 times we've been together. I've talked to you more deeply than I had talked to her for the first, like, 10, 12 years. And then she got sick, and because I was the only person she knew at that moment who had also done chemotherapy, that created, like, a little bit of room for us to talk in a way that she didn't want to talk to other people. Because how many people here have done chemotherapy? Like, a lot. So make a noise. so we know things that the rest of you don't. And one of the things we know is that it's not as bad as you think it is, right? Would you agree with that? And but that it comes with like a super complicated set. It's a super emotional experience. So anyway, she was more comfortable with me suddenly, and I had a role to play, and I had a way to be useful to her, which is divine. I mean, to be somebody who can be useful to somebody in a situation like that is truly divine. That's as close as you come, I think, to fulfilling your potential as a human being. And one thing led to another, with her. And then as my dad died and was dying, we talked a lot about that. And she was openly interested in exactly how he died. And like, when did hospice come in? And did his skin model? And did they massage him? And what medicines did they give him? And when did I know? And did I believe he could hear me? And was there anything unsightly? And so she was sort of trying to prefigure how this would go for her, and she was letting me know that that's what she was trying to do. Like, because of the nature of the questions she was asking, and because I was answering them, instead of pushing off, instead of saying, "Oh, Liz, this isn't going to happen to you. Don't worry," all that like happy talk.
Right.
At some point, you don't want if you know. And I knew she was going to die, and she knew she was going to die, and nobody else would talk about it.
Right.
And so I became important to her, and
that's how that was.
it just the things that I talked to her about in that last year and a half, I've never talked to anybody about. And we should all be talking to each other more. Like, really, like, let's get off first base, people. Like, we talked about, like, her sex life with her husband. Like, people really should talk about that a little bit. Like, it would be very helpful to one another if we knew, like, how often we were actually having sex. So if anyone would like to tell me that, I would appreciate it. And, she talked to me about money. Like, he had made a lot of money, and she had a lot of discomfort with it, and she had a lot of weird feelings about whether she should be giving it to people in her lives, and how can you let a family member struggle when your husband could just write them a check and make it all go away. And, it's shit that nobody talks about. And in a weird way, she had a best friend, and I have a best friend. So we were not each other's best friends, but there was this incredible intimacy that opened up between us. And so it was just an incredible loss of the intimacy. Like, that's what I miss. I miss being able to talk to somebody in that way. And honestly, like, just for a pause, for a commercial break, this is the point of books.
Yeah.
Because nobody is really talking, right? Because everybody is, like, coming up short, and they're too scared to share. We write things in books, and other people write things in books. And if you want to feel like a human being again, you only have two choices. You have to start talking to somebody, for real, or you have to read a book. Right?
The first chapter of this book starts with a sort of a day that starts in grief, right? Where you're just in pain, and you're dealing with your kids and your husband, who you value, just seem like a pain in the ass, and you're suffering. And you're suffering about the loss of your friend, and you're suffering about the loss of your dad. And the title of that chapter is "It's Like This." And I have found that statement, that has really stuck with me and given me comfort, not in dealing with grief, but just in dealing with regular life, like going through a day and feeling like, why am I irritable, or why do I have a sad feeling that there's no reason for? And that sentence of, well, it's like this sometimes, has given me a lot of comfort. And I think part of why is that, thinking it's like this makes it less isolating. If you're a fellow human who has like a normal human experience, then it feels less isolating. And I wondered if you'd read for us a little bit. Do you want mine or you want yours?
I actually have it called out. Isn't
well.
Funny? So this is the very end of It's Like This, which is the first chapter, and it's one of the very last things I wrote. So it had a different ending for a long time, like a year. But then, as Ariel will attest, like as you're writing, you think you're writing about one thing, and then it starts to change on you, and then it starts to change on you again, and then you hear yourself describe it in a new way. Then you overhear a story, and that tweaks it. And then you sometimes want to come all the way back around, and those sentences that you lay down at the very end are sometimes like the most crystallized. And that's the case with these for me. This is what's underneath this whole thing. So I had written this story about like 20 pages of just total nonsense that was going on in my house, which included like receiving a shirt from J. Crew that I had bought on sale, final sale, non-returnable, that didn't fit, but I tried to smash it on my body, and the only way to get it off was to cut it off with scissors. It was like a vest. And then it also like included finding a pile of cut toenails on my kitchen table where I serve food to my family. Because someone didn't have a chance to get those in the trash. But I do. So that's my job. So anyway, here's how this ends. Hidden in the morning's frustrations, like a rattlesnake in the woodpile, is something else. I close my eyes so I can listen for the other thing, the further away, much worse thing, in the quiet of my own head. Life ends. I've known this since the summer of 1972 when an ambulance drove away in silence with the old lady who gave out almond joys on Halloween. But now I've seen mortality do its awful ghosting up close, twice, and that has changed the context of everything. In the new Zodiac, without Greenie, without Liz, all terms have been recalibrated. Pain is agony. Bad is fatal. The scale is reset, making it hard for me to reconcile what I've seen with how I live. Liz would have done a week of aggressive bromodomain inhibitors at Cedars-Sinai for one morning of hairballs, eggshells, and toenail clippings. To see her kids become teenagers screaming obscenities at each other in the hall, she'd have given up every organ in her pelvic cavity. Then there's Greenie, who would have told you that life was a carnival, all music and snack stalls, fortune tellers, and strong men. It's magical, Levy. Edward called Greenie a happiness genius, but ask anyone. He was as excited about being alive as anyone you will ever meet. This isn't just a kid making a hero out of her dad. And me? I walked next to him in that festival light for almost 50 years. And then one night in February, his hand went still in mine, and here I am, same as ever, except quicker to anger and 13 pounds heavier. Shouldn't loss change a person for the better, forever? Maybe Will's curious phrase, "It's like this," applies here too. This forgetting, this slide into smallness, this irritability and shame, this disorienting grief, it's like this. Minds don't rest. They reel and wander and fixate and roll back and reconsider because it's like this, having a mind. Hearts don't idle. They swell and constrict and break and forgive and behold because it's like this, having a heart. Lives don't last. They thrill and confound and circle and overflow and disappear because it's like this, having a life.
One of the things you said in there is, shouldn't loss change a person for the better forever? Why should it? How did you get that idea?
You don't have that idea?
I,
Do you have that idea? Like that somehow you should...
that it's an opportunity for growth.
Yeah. And that you wouldn't be so small-minded or self-centered or vulnerable to the quotidian bullshit of daily life anymore. Like that, how could I possibly look at my children fighting in the hall over a t-shirt with anything but like a song in my heart, like I get to be here. I mean, the most important line in the whole book to me is the last line, which is, your profoundly ordinary kid is singing in the shower, and you get to be here to hear it. Like, to me, it's like, if you could just stay there, if you could just remember that that's like enough. That even if your kid's just ordinary, they don't go to a fancy school, they don't have some crazy job you get to brag about for the rest of your life. They don't have a perfect body, they don't have perfect SATs, they're just your kid. But they had a moment that was so happy that they were singing, "Oh, the single ladies, oh, the single ladies." And that at that moment, you passed by and got to feel that. Like, shouldn't that be enough? And then here I am, raging about the hairballs.
But so acceptance, which you talk about as the Mount Everest of human emotions, hypothetically would include accepting what you said there, that it's like this having a life, which is to say, not forever, but also that wouldn't it include accepting like that we can't, that very few of us
Yes.
can always
Yes.
maintain perspective and have any kind of,
Yes.
Stay in touch with that gratitude.
Yes, and that's why it was such a freeing thing for this guy to have said to me, this Will fellow, is that it is the forgetting and then the returning. That it's like this, like that's it, that's how it goes for everyone. You're not alone, as you said initially, and it's not supposed to. We don't hold the position forever.
Right.
We hold many positions, and we have many parts of us that are speaking to us in the course of any week, and some of them are great, and some of them are pitiful.
And the other part, the first part of that, the other acceptance part, of course, is accepting that people you love are gone. And I was struck by something you said in here that your cousin, who had a son who died in a car accident, said, which is that she spent a decade trying to think, why did this happen? And eventually she came up with, it happened because it can.
Yeah, and that's in the chapter called I Don't Know, which of all the chapters that could have become like their own book, that was one. It just, there's so much to talk about when you're thinking about uncertainty and also like what's unknown and then what is unknowable. And she was my example that I held out as a real role model of somebody who had embraced the uncertainty, and she pointed this out to me, that she had really driven herself mad with this question, like, why did that happen? And you can imagine that that's all you would do maybe for the rest of your life if you lost a child. And she had been with him earlier that night, and it was raining, and she had tried to get him to stay with them, and they left a family party, and he was just going to go for a second, and I can only imagine how many times she replayed it, like microsecond by nanosecond. But then she said, it happened because it can, like a car can flip. Like roads are slick and there can be leaves and a car can flip and the glass can break and the metal can pierce and that can happen. And that really gave her like an ending. And then there was new things to do. But that really marked off like, I'm not going to ask that question anymore. And the reason why I encourage myself in this book to get more comfortable with saying I don't know and embracing I don't know is because if you're deluding yourself that maybe you could know if you just thought about it right, or you read the right thing, or you talked to the right person, or you asked the right person for advice, that there is an answer and you could find it, then all your energy, all your intellectual and emotional energy is devoted to that, which means none of it can go to anything else that might be vastly more productive.
That I don't know chapter, a big thing, I think, that the I don't know is referring to in that is God. And I wondered if you would talk to us a little bit about what religion meant to you in your family growing up and in your family now.
Yeah. So my parents knew. They grew up in an all-Catholic world. Everybody ate fish on Fridays. Everybody had ashes on their forehead on Ash Wednesday. Everybody gave things up for Lent. And, I was just in Japan, where 98.5% of the population is Japanese. And I thought, God, we're trying to do something so much more complicated here in America. We're throwing so much more into the mix. And with choice comes consternation and torture, actually. And so I grew up in a different culture. My parents took us to church every Sunday. My parents went to church every single day. It was the absolute core center of their lives and a great source of comfort to them. And they weren't weird or pushy about it. And we didn't have not that it's weird to have stuff on your walls, but we didn't have anything like that. And we didn't go to, retreats or anything like that. And really, honestly, I don't think my parents ever read the Bible. That's like the Catholic version of Christianity. It's like Like, we're not Bible beaters, but we're super judgmental. So, anywho, so, you know, when I got sick, and then my dad got sick, when my dad got sick, the doctor said to my brother, like on the sly, like, have a great year with him. And this is 10 years before he died. And so we were like buckled down for that. And then I got better. I had a stage 3, 7 centimeter by 4 centimeter tumor. So it was a complex case and I was young. But I got better, and then he got better. And we would talk about how on earth that could happen. And to my parents, it was like, Levy, there are people praying for me around the world. Which basically referred to like one person, because my friend Charlie lived in Russia. Swear to God. And I said one time, I mean, I didn't press my parents on their religion, and I wouldn't do it today. But I did say one time, like, don't you think the medicine has something to do with it? Like, I took something that was new. I was one of the first people to ever take Herceptin, which is what you take when you have HER2 cancer, and it's really a phenomenal drug. And you know, somebody had to work for that and develop that and even have the idea to hatch and then to follow through on it and go to medical school and all that effort, all that human effort to come to that solution. And he said, oh, God, Levy, what do you think makes somebody want to cure cancer? And he thought it was so silly, and that that I was being so literal. Like, he's like, right, but the reason they want to cure cancer is because they got like a big dose of God in them. And so then that left open the possibility that, and I want to leave open the possibility, to be quite honest. Like, I don't want to reject it. I don't want it to not be true. I mean, I went to St. Patrick's Cathedral today to say hi to Greenie. Yeah, he used to go to church there at noon, and then he'd have his sales meeting at 12:30. They'd drink 3 or 4 martinis, and he'd be on the 325 Amtrak down to Philadelphia. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what I think, and I sometimes, it's a similar feeling that I have. Here's 2 feelings that are similar, and I've never tried to articulate this before. One is that I really love red meat. And so there are certain movies that I haven't watched, because I know if I knew, I wouldn't eat it anymore. And I don't want to not eat it anymore. And then I also, have you guys read much C.S. Lewis? Like, he's just the most beautiful writer. Any ideas aside, or beliefs aside, it's just so beautiful. You could do no better than to read a little bit of that every day, to just like kind of try to see if you can get some of that magic on your fingertips before you start. And when I was reading Mere Christianity, I had this like terrifying feeling of like, I don't know if I want to finish this, because I don't know if I want to believe this. Because if I believe this, then there's like a whole bunch of stuff I'm supposed to do. Like, I'm definitely supposed to be a better person. And I'm totally getting away with not being that good a person. So I don't know. Do you know?
No, of course not. I don't know anything. One of the things that that strikes me about in not just this book, but in your writing in general, is that it's like Greenie, your late dad, is almost a god, in the sense that a force for pure benevolent love, right? Like, I just get this overwhelming sense that not just you, but people who interacted with him in general always felt like he was just this source of pure love, right?
But how many people here have met my dad? How great was my dad?
Okay, so what have you learned from him about parenting? What are some of his parenting techniques that you've managed to adopt?
Well, you know, it's funny. He was a real tell me more guy. So
that's another one of the chapter titles.
Is Tell Me More, and everybody at Random House, I think that was their favorite. And so when we were trying to figure out what to call this thing,
thanks.
Oh, hi, hey there. We're supposed to act like that didn't happen, but I felt like that was weird, right? So anyway, he was a real Tell Me More guy. Like, he really couldn't wait to hear your story. And he wanted the long version.
Yeah.
So he was just one of the world's great listeners. And I feel like, I mean, I'm 50 years old. I'm going to say that 5% of humanity actually knows how to listen in the way that I'm talking about. And I do not count myself as one, because I like to solve. I like to fix. So when Georgia or Claire or Edward is telling me something, it's not my inclination to kind of hang back and be like, tell me more, what else, really? And then what happened? And really let them get it all out, it's like cleaning out the garage, keep going, go all the way to the back wall and see what else you can find back there. And, but I'm more, I'm really quick to say, well, have you tried this? So here's an idea. And I think I find it it's like an intellectual game, and I think that the purpose of the game is to solve the problem. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's not the purpose of the game. Not when you're just trying to love somebody. Mm-hmm. The purpose of the game is to make them feel loved. And if you want to make somebody feel loved, listen to them and ask them 1,000 questions. Mm-hmm. Like the thing behind the thing behind the thing. These guys at Random House always tease me that I talk about the thing behind the thing behind the thing, but I really believe that. And it goes back to something we were talking about earlier, that people don't really talk. We kind of have the same conversations over and over again with one another, and we don't go to second base or third base. And I want to, when you tell me more someone, you get past the first thing, and then you get past the second thing, and then you get to some real thing that you can definitely relate to. So if Georgia says, so-and-so says that I was being mean to her, and I wasn't being mean to her, then I want to say, were you sure you weren't being mean to her? Which is right off the bat, wrong thing to say, right? My friend Betsy says, always be on their side. You're the one person that's supposed to always be on their side. So that's good. And then I'll say, well, why don't you tell her, blah, blah, blah. But if you tell me more her, which my friend Tracy Tuttle, my college roommate, was kind of making me do on this one car ride when Georgia was on the speakerphone, then you find out that really what happened is someone said Georgia was being mean to this girl, and nobody stuck up for Georgia. None of her friends said, but you weren't. And it had happened, something similar had happened to another girl, and they did stick up for her. And so then the thing behind that thing was, I don't feel like I'm supported in the same way. Mm-hmm. And then she said, and sometimes I tell a joke, and it's more or less the exact same joke that Lulu told, but everyone laughs when Lulu tells it, and they don't laugh when I tell it. That is so heartbreaking and real and relatable, and it's all the juicy good stuff where your love can be at its highest and best use. Mm-hmm. Is the thing behind the thing behind the thing. And the only way to get there is to tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. And Greenie, he just loved hearing your story. He couldn't get enough. I mean, where are you from? That's great. Did you play sports in high school? That's great. Tell me another thing. Where are you working now? Oh, God, great. Now, where's that located? I mean, honest to God, he'd just pummel you with 20 questions in a row. And people would leave feeling I am smart, funny, and beautiful. I tell you what, that guy couldn't get enough of me. And so I think two things. I think one is the number one thing all people want above all else: money, sex, good figure, these boots. They're good. They're really good, right? I got them at the secondhand store for $23.
I was about to say, we know they didn't cost $200 or more.
Michael Kors for $23.
Kelly, that's great.
Thank you. Thank you for validating that part of me.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. See, I feel super green
I'm
right
trying
now.
to.
You're really
but I'm not. I'm saying things, not asking you questions. But we're on stage, so anyway.
Right. I think the number one thing that people want is to feel that they've been felt. And I think that if you really love someone, which is different than wanting to help someone or wanting to fix someone, but you just love them, just right as they are, right there, then the only trick is you have to make sure they know it. They have to feel it. So you have to both have the feeling and know that the feeling has been felt. And that's it. You're done, if you can do that.
I'm going to move to the questions that the person just brought me from all of you in 1 second. I want to ask you one last question of my own, which is that one of the things you talk about is that one of the things that leads us away from acceptance or from just listening or from, but mainly leads us away from acceptance, is the pull towards narrative.
Yes.
Can you talk about that for a minute? I think that's so
Yeah.
interesting.
So have you guys ever heard of the Nantucket Project? Anyone? Okay, a couple. So the Nantucket Project is a little bit like Aspen Ideas Festival or TED, and they have this 4-day festival in Nantucket every year. And years ago, I got asked to go give a talk there, and the guy said, we want it to be the talk of your life, which was kind of like, but also like, oh, I gotta have to try now. Like I'm gonna, God damn it, like, you know. And so anyway, I thought, and the biggest thing that I wanted to say was that I think that acceptance is really hard. I think there's a lot to accept in life, like accept the way that your kids are different than you thought they might be, accept the true nature of yourself, your marriage, your body, your mortality, accept weather, accept unknowns, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that that's really hard, and I think one of the things that's making it really hard is that we are kind of a storytelling animal, and that when we do story, we do it actually in a very specific way, where we set up a protagonist on a journey, and they have some challenges, but they eventually conquer, and then there's a resolution, and then it's kind of like tidy, and everybody learned their lesson. And we do that, we take in stories like that, reading and watching movies, and we make stories like that. So you'll see it now that I've made you aware of it, if you weren't already. Tomorrow, like as you're talking to people, someone will say, you know, well, the business thing didn't work out, and you'll say, oh, you know what happened? And then you'll make a little story about it. You'll say, well, they hired Joe, and once Joe got in there, things started to really plummet. You know, and you'll have a villain, and you'll have an answer to it, and it'll resolve. And all that stuff that we're doing with each other in terms of creating narrative, spontaneously and unwittingly, and then also all the narrative we're consuming, not to mention like 12 to 16 to 18 years of education that tells you about like the 5-part dramatic structure, is making us expect something that real life rarely delivers, which is denouement. Like most of the time, a relationship, let's say, doesn't resolve. It just goes in circles. And like best case scenario, the circles are a little wider, so you don't get back to the same fight quite as frequently. You know, that's like that's what I'm starting to think is like the best a marriage can be, is that you used to fight about it once a month, and then after 30 years, you fight about it like once every 2 years. And, you know, and you lose your investment in it, but...
Mostly.
So I think that... I think I completely lost my train of thought.
No, I think you said it. I think you're saying
Oh,
that,
I know what you're asking about, the narrative stuff and the acceptance. So I do think that if we could tell each other, it all goes back to conversations, which is now like the new project of Nantucket Project, which I'll tell you about in a second. But if we were able to talk to each other in a way that didn't force a narrative, and if we were to say to each other, you know, I never knew. You know, like such and such happened, and the guy broke up with me, but then I got this weird job, and I never knew why any of that happened. Like when I got sick, I was 36, I had 2 kids in diapers, and literally 90% of the conversations I had included, is it in your family? And I was like, boy, you guys really want that to be the story, don't you? Like that would make it work. Another thing people always say is, what a wake-up call. Which would be like another great moral of the story, is that like we were busy in our lives and we weren't attending to each other and we didn't care about what mattered, and then we had this terrible crisis that brought us back together. Like, isn't that a great story that we can all believe in? But I didn't need to be woken up. Like I worked for United Way, like I knew that I like had it good. So if we could stop with all the narrative making all the time, and just let things do their funny shapes. Like if the shape wasn't this, but it was like this and like this, we would be doing each other a real favor to like open up the possibility for it to not be as tidy as we've been trained to believe it might be. Did that make sense?
Yes.
It's good, because I felt like it didn't. Oh.
No, I thought it was great. Okay, here are some questions from your readers. Thank you for sharing your wonderful stories and insight I've struggled with meditation mindfulness. You seem to have a real-world approach to these concepts. Any everyday tips on how to overlook the toenail piles?
Read this book like once a week. Well, I do think one thing is to forgive yourself for not quite being able to overlook the toenail piles. Like that it's like this. Like, this is it. This is how this goes. And I do think that people are, I think that, like, of all the research they've ever done about what makes people happy, it's like across time and culture and whatever age you are, and it's just meaningful connection to others. That's the only thing that ever comes up as the answer. And meaningful connection to others requires deep conversation. And deep conversation requires that you go out of your comfort zone, right? That you go past first base. That you use words like this: I was wrong, I don't know, tell me more, no, good enough. All of that could help get you into a level of conversation that could really feed you. And if you're in that kind of space, then I bet the toenails won't make you so angry. Maybe.
If you could give advice to your 20-year-old self, what would you tell her about launching a career in writing?
Stop drinking so much. Don't worry about your weight. Cigarettes are for losers. And write every day. I mean, this is a great time to try to be a writer because you can share it so easily. And just the mere act of sharing it makes you work harder. So it's one thing to, like, keep your precious darling to yourself and polish it and polish it and polish it for 25 years and never show it to another person. But the act of having to share, say, a blog or to do a little self-published project or something like that, you know, my first gig in writing was that I wrote a newspaper column every Friday for the Piedmonter, which is given out free in our neighborhood. I got paid $50. It was like basically like a shill for selling real estate. But my picture was in the paper next to the column, and it was 900 words. And because it came out on a Friday, before we would go out on Friday night or see people at the lacrosse games on Saturday or whatever, I knew that people would read it and talk to me about it. And the idea that, like, Chris Wilrich, this smart, neat guy who lives in our town, or Betsy Barnes, or somebody like that would have read it, made me really want to work harder writing it. And so it became like kind of a rigorous exercise. Mm-hmm. And that's really easy now. You don't even have to get a gig in the Piedmonter. You can just put it online because someone's going to read it. And if that person is someone you know, all the better. Because we're designed, I think, to care deeply about someone someone we know thinks.
Yeah.
See? Yeah. So I think you should write every day, and I think you should share it frequently. Like, don't hold it.
And there's another part of this question about what you would advise your 20-year-old self. Basically, like, what would you tell your 20-year-old self regarding it's like this? What's it like, I think is what this means. What should the 20-year-old self know it's like?
What's it like, you guys? You tell the 20-year-old. There's so much in every day. Like, if you were to actually, like, keep an inventory of your thoughts and emotions in a 24-hour period, there's so much. It's like this it's like a lot is what I want to say. Like, there's a lot in every day, and the potential of every day is so much greater than generally we give it credit for. So I've been doing this thing with the Nantucket Project where we're starting this thing where you gather little circles of 15 people and you get together and you watch some Nantucket Project content and then you talk. And it's confidential and it's free form and you sit for 2 or 3 hours. And the things that come up in there, like, you don't know who you're sitting next to, right? Generally in life. And this is why I say there's just so much more potential in any given day than we're giving it credit for. So I've been doing these conversations since July, and I've done them all over in California and back here and et cetera. And it's always like mind-boggling, the stuff people share and the stuff people have been through and the stuff people know that I want to know, like the wisdom that they have that I want. And so because I've been in this little practice, I got invited to a couple of Christmas cocktail parties, as one does, and some of them were less exciting to me on the face of it than others. But you go and you do your kind of town thing, and I would see people that generally I am not excited to chat with, and then I kind of struggle to make conversation with. But because I had this thing in my head from all this Nantucket Project stuff, I thought, let's call her June, this person. That June, who I typically avoid, like maybe June's got a story just like the people in those circles that I've been in. And maybe if I ask the right questions, we're gonna have a quality of interaction that's gonna make the whole night better. And sure as shit, June's got a story. And now I'm getting better at finding that in any given day. I'm getting better at being in the world and getting a little bit more out of each person I'm in contact with. And that's just a practice, you really have to decide. And it's a lot of you have to be proactive about it and say, I want this to be more than it could be. This is all kinds of levels this could be with you and me. And really, the very first time we met, I interviewed Ariel about The Rules Don't Apply. Have you read The Rules Don't Apply?
Oh, that's nice.
So, I just admire it so much for the story and for the writing and for the thinking and for the theme that it's hung on. And it's really, I can't encourage you enough. Although if you're only going to buy one book tonight.
Then, right.
Let's not go crazy. You can borrow my copy, you know what I'm saying?
She was telling me before about how she was at some event with her mom, and somebody came up and was like, can you sign it for Jennifer, Annie, Bethany, and Paige, these sisters? And her mom was like, sounds like you need 4 copies.
Yeah. Listen, we all need to buy books. Everybody needs books in their lives. It is a scary world right now, and it's chaotic and it's noisy, and everybody needs to be reading every day. It is essential to your health. And can I just say, while I'm on this little high horse that I'm on, every single time from now until you die that you read a book that you love, would you please post about it on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you are? Because people need to be encouraged to read. We need to remember it. It got lost somewhere. And it's so incredibly good for us. It could save us. It is releasing. You sleep better. You think better. You're more kind. It's the answer. So when you read a book you love, just take a picture of the cover and say, I love this book. And then you can go back to tweeting about you-know-who.
I think that you might have just answered this other question that somebody wanted to know, what's the one thing you know? And you may have something better.
That Oprah fucking rocks. That's what I know today. Was that unbelievable? Oh my God. It was so satisfying to feel leadership again. Anyway. What do I know? I know that it's enough to keep trying. That's what I know. I know that you get credit just for staying in the game and trying your damnedest. That's a lot. Don't give up. Don't give up on humanity. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your shit that you want to do. Don't give up on the people in your life. Just stay in it. It might take a little longer than you think, but it's worth it. And staying in and throwing yourself into it day after day, that's a lot. That's a lot. That's a distinguishing feature.
That's a happy, encouraging note.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to end on that because it's happy and encouraging, and because we're out of time, and because that's all of your questions. But as Kelly mentioned, we're going to be signing books out there, and I just want to say thank you for doing this. I think we all really enjoyed it.
Thank you guys so much.